Hello and welcome to Security Analysis. I am UDAY BHASKAR. The focus this week is on theater commands and the reorganization of India's higher defense management. In the last week, it has been reported in the media that India is moving towards 2 theater commands in the near future. And there have been different, I would say, reports, different balloons that have been floated, some alas in a rather clunky way. But that is something we will address later. For the record, India currently has 17 individual service commands, 7 each with the Army and the Air Force, and 3 with the Navy, which is the smallest service if you look at it in a relative manner. Now, since the Kargil War of 1999, almost every expert recommendation and professional assessment was that given the technological orientation of the modern military machine, that there was a case for some kind of review and a move towards synergy between the 3 services, tri-service integration, harmonization, synergy, inter-service dependency to be increased. There are various ways of describing this. But this has been going on for about 20 odd years. And to his credit, Prime Minister Modi in his second term prioritized this issue. And in 2019, a decision was taken to take the post of a CS or Chief of Defense Staff. General Bipin Rawat, the former army chief, assumed office as India's first CDS on January the 1st, 2020. So we are roughly 18 months into his assuming this office. And his mandate at that time, the priority was very, very clear: to embark on the reorganization. And the professional assessment at that time was that the theater commands, and 2 of them, the air defense and the maritime, were described as low-hanging fruit. Now again, recent media reports indicate that the government has constituted a high-level meeting because there were some wrinkles, some interministerial, because along with the Defense Ministry, the Home Ministry, the Finance, there are various other ministries that are stakeholders. And again, a certain degree of inter-service rivalry according to the media reports. Now, these dissonances needed to be addressed, and one understands that the government is currently engaged in this particular direction. Now, to discuss this, place it in context, I have great pleasure in introducing and welcoming a very eminent panel. This is perhaps the first time that Security Analysis has the equivalent of 10 stars. So let me begin by introducing our guests. First, we have with us former Chief of Naval Staff and former Chairman of the Chiefs of Staff Committee, Admiral SUNIL LANBA. Welcome, Admiral LANBA. He's also currently the Chairman of the National Maritime Foundation.
Thank you.
We also have with us Air Marshal Raghunath Nambiar. Air Marshal Nambiar is a distinguished fighter pilot, and he has a very rare kind of, I would say, service profile. If I've got it right, Raghu, you were the AOC in C for 2 commands, both the East and the Western Air Command. And you have the distinction of serving at AOC level in all the commands, operational commands. And I think more importantly, when it comes to Kargil, you were the first pilot to drop the laser-guided munition. So delighted to have you, and I hope that we'll be able to benefit from your inputs on this rather complex subject.
Thank you, sir.
And we also have with us Lieutenant General PRAVEEN, BAKSHI, 2nd generation Army officer, cavalry pedigree, if I may put it that way, PRAVEEN. Always a great pleasure to introduce cavalry officers on this panel. He was, before he retired, the GOC in C of the Eastern Army in Kolkata. A very, very thoughtful writer. I have read his work and I'm very glad that he is here with us. The Army is the lead service in India, so I'm sure he'll have much to contribute to this. What I will do is I'll begin with you, Air Marshal Nambiar, if I may. There's been, as I said, I'm just putting this on the table. You could please correct this perception. But what is now being discussed in the public domain is that the Air Force is dragging its feet. And for whatever reason, I'm not subscribing to this. I'm just saying this. I think it's unfortunate that the media, at least some sections, have reported it in this manner, but that the Air Force is dragging its feet and being a dog in the manger when it comes to the theater command, particularly the Air Defense Command that has been referred to. So if you would be kind enough to place this in context and objectively explain to our viewers, who by the way are all by and large young India, as to what this is all about. All yours, Air Marshal.
Thank you, sir. It's a privilege and honor to be in a panel like this. And at the very outset, let me first confirm the Air Force view, which I have understood from listening to so many of my former chiefs and many other folks who have been writing in the public domain, that the Indian Air Force is actually happy with a theater command, provided it is one theater, what we term the India theater. Our problem today in the Indian Air Force, and as I see it in the Army and the Navy as well, is a lack of sufficient resources to split ourselves into multiple theaters where we sort of dilute our capability and are enabled to bring our force to bear on the enemy. The very idea of theater command is not, as you said, from Kargil. What Kargil, the Kargil Review Committee report and the group of ministers report after that and the PV Vora Committee report after that, all of them, none of them ever talked about the word theater. What they spoke about was border management. What they spoke about was joining up in intelligence, joint planning, and better methods to fight the war together. Not once were in this group of ministers or in the Kargil Committee report, which is open in the open domain, have this word theater been ever mentioned. 110 pages of report without theater. The first time theater actually came into the horizon and the slanging match started out between the three services was the use of the theater in the Shiketkar Committee report. And that was a report by a 3-star officer. And it is there in the open domain, whatever is available to us. Most of it is concealed from most eyes, and it's not in the public domain. Now, having said this, the Indian Air Force is all for one theater because we have only 30 fighter squadrons. We have got at best about 3 to 4 air-to-air refuelers, maybe 3 to 4 evacs at any time serviceable. And if we were to now give it into theaters, we would be landing up into a situation where we could sort of distributing poverty. And that is not something which we want to do.
So thank you, Raghu. I think that's a very lucid and comprehensive overview about how the Air Force sees the theater. Let me turn to Admiral LANBA. Sir, you have been the chairman of the Chiefs of Staff for a very long period. I think you have perhaps the longest stint as COSC, Chairman COSC in recent years. And much of this happened on your watch. So would you be kind enough to share your thoughts, first of all, about the concept of the theater commands and the Maritime Command in particular, which has been spoken about? Sunil?
Thank you, Commodore Bhaskar. No, these reforms were long overdue. And I think the Prime Minister has taken a logical step of appointment of the CDS and giving him the mandate. There was a trying need of reorganizing ourselves as a country to manage higher defense management of defense issues. And started off with the appointment of the CDS and him being mandate to take things forward. I think the trying need of the hour is that we need to publish a national security strategy, and based on that, we have to look at integration of the three services. There's a crying need of joint planning, integration, especially on the land borders, where if we ever to go to war with our two adversaries, it's going to be a joint effort between the Army and the Air Force on the land frontier. And for that, we need theater commands to tackle this issue. In the maritime domain, maritime operations generally take place independently. And in our context along the land borders, maritime operations will not be in direct support of what is happening on the land borders. But if you take the 1971 war example, where the maritime forces played a vital role in cutting off then East Pakistan in the Bay of Bengal for both logistic support and escape routes. So maritime forces will always be in conjoint to provide support. There is a need for both reorganization at the ground level in the form of theaters and also higher defense management at New Delhi. I think we have taken a right step in taking forward the concept of a maritime theater command and taking on Air Marshal Raghu, both air assets, naval assets, even now are allocated to different commands. And when the operational need arises, they are reshifted, rebased, or positioned in different commands. Say, like in the case of the Navy, units are sent from the Eastern Command to the Western Command and vice versa, depending on the operational necessity. So even if there are forces allotted to a particular theater, they can always be re-allotted wherever the operational requirement is. So this is not really a binding thing that we cannot need a theater. But we need to make a distinction between geographical theaters and functions. Air defense is a function, while on the land frontiers, you will have geographical theaters. So we need to make a distinction between. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Lamba. I think, these are again important points. So what I infer from your remarks is that by and large, the Navy is okay to sort of proceed in this manner and move towards a single maritime command. What the implications are, depending on the current configuration of the Western Naval Command, Eastern Naval Command, and the Andaman Nicobar. I'll come back to you in the next round. But let me turn to General Bakshi. General Bakshi, the Army is the lead service in India in terms of size, in terms of pedigree, in terms of your history and so on. But when you look at where India is currently, we have fairly complex challenges. Galwan is barely 1 year old. We still have this challenge of Pakistan and terrorism, the two-front war. Would the new arrangement with the Air Defense Command, I'm not quite sure why it is considered low-hanging, but if this AD command were to come and the others follow, would this give us a greater capacity to deal with the challenges that we now have?
Thank you, sir. And thanks to both the speakers who spoke in their minds in a very candid manner. I shall also try and emulate their example. To my mind, the focus has unfortunately shifted to theaterization. And every critique is, whether for it or against it, is towards this aspect. To my mind, I think we need to rise above this. And that was not the intent of the government. What is being attempted by the present government is deep structural defense reforms. And the start point was of the CDS, which has been done. And thereafter, given him a mandate of theaterization. Now, whether it has to be gone through, whether there's strong opposition, that's still open for debate. But I have yet to see anyone say we are against theaterization. But currently, what most people are saying, and that's also true for the Army, is that the time has not come. So my question to that is, when will the time come? You can't ride both the horses, one leg on both the horse, to say we are for the concept, but the time has not come. We've been discussing this for the last 20 odd years. Let me candidly state, if theaterization comes in, the biggest loser will be the Indian Army. Indian Army's assets will go under the other services, other service theaters commanded by the other two services or three services, whatever. The biggest loser is the Indian Army chief. When this concept was first being raised, and I think, if I'm not wrong, Admiral Lamba and I were both there, it was first brought to the fore in 2015 by the Prime Minister. It's not that this concept has started in the last 2 years. People are pegging the start point from the announcement of the CS, the theaters. But internally, he had been pushing for this jointness, further integration without the mention of theaters right from day one. And to be fair to him, it is the political will which has imposed the CDS onto us. Otherwise, I dare say, all three services, the bureaucracy, everyone was shuffling, hedging, not clearly articulating that they want a CDS or a theaters. They were all echoing, or the lowest common denominator they agreed to was having a permanent chairman chief of staff with no other structural reforms to take place. To candidly state, I echo what Admiral LANBA said. I think the time has come. There has been enough time. We are not optimizing. We don't have the monies for all these, expensive weapon platforms to be distributed amongst the services, to be duplicated amongst the services. It makes great economic sense. And as far as war fighting goes, from my own experience, and the last one being in Doklam, when I was there, whilst we have excellent synergy at the field level, field army, field CNCs levels, I dare say the same cannot be said about the three services in Delhi. And to that extent, theaterization tends to overcome it. I'll stop here and wait for the further questions.
Thank you, Praveen. I think all your points are very valid. Let me just add a couple of strands, if I may. The first is that as far as this reorganization of the armed forces for greater synergy and jointness is an old chestnut. I think I'm glad you mentioned that. I recall that when we had Dr. Manmohan Singh as the Prime Minister in his second term, in his address to the combined commanders, which incidentally was reported in the media, that's how I picked it up, he had encouraged the services then to come up with their own roadmap as to how to synergize, jointness, interdependency, all of that. But you're right, it was a political decision. And to his credit, Mr. Modi as Prime Minister has bitten the bullet, picked up the gauntlet, whatever. But since you mentioned resources, which is a constraint, it's going to be even more so for India with the COVID shadow that is there now. How does India manage, the assets, the material resources we know? And I've said this on every discussion we've had on the subject. We had the report by General Khanduri when he was the chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Defense. And he drew attention to the glaring inventory gaps. So this is a question I'll pose to both Admiral LANBA and you about theaterization and assets. But let me turn to you, Raghu, since you made this point about the single theater. Now, do you think it would be viable with the current asset level that India has in terms of composite air power? The Air Force is no doubt the lead service for air power, but the Navy has a certain profile for air power, so does the Army. Can these really be synergized in the way that is being envisioned, for instance, by the other two services? Air Marshal Nambiar?
Sir, I will echo exactly what Admiral LANBA mentioned. The fact that what is happening today is perfectly okay. He, in fact, used those words and said that whenever required forces are moved to his requirements. So where is the problem lie? What is all this started? What is the start point for all this problem? It was the way the Kargil war was fought. Now, Kargil is a small theater about 100 kilometers wide and involved the Indian Air Force putting in as many as about 8 fighter squadrons into that fray to contain that battle. And it was fought for about 50 days, as you are all aware. At the end of that battle, when we had this review committee by Mr. Subramaniam, and when they went into all these details, the facts which are available in the open domain, never once have they mentioned any problem with the way the war was actually fought. What was mentioned was the fact that at the higher levels in Delhi, and probably even in the field, there was a lack of jointness. By field, I mean at corps headquarter level, or probably at that point in time. And that this was 22 years ago when there was a serious lack of communication. And I vividly recall having fought that battle. Our problem was we did not have secure lines. The Mirage fleet that was based at Adampur and at Ambala. And we were fighting the war from there. which today, in today's parlances, would be where Western Command would be located, the Western Land Command, which is the new nomenclature which is being used. But we were fighting in the Northern Land Theater. And this was on a daily basis. We were launching as many as 4 sorties per aircraft over a 24-hour period. And this was operating out of Western Command fields, Western Land Theater Command fields, and operating in the Northern Land Theater. Our problem was we had a GLO based here at Adampur, who was 3 or 4 corps removed away from 15 corps where the battle was being fought. So effectively, the information that flew down to us or got to us was totally inadequate and inadequate for a proper air-land battle the way we have normally envisaged it. You know, the sort of close cooperation with a GLO type A, B, C, and the whole network. Nothing worked. That was where the problem lay. And now, if you were to even theaterize today and theaterize the way that is now being advocated in the press of a Northern Land Theater, which would fight the war with China and Pakistan, a Western Land Theater, which would fight with probably Pakistan alone, and a Eastern Land Theater, just China alone. And you have an Air Force, which is just about 30 squadrons, with a few squadrons devoted to the Maritime Theater, and probably a few squadrons devoted to the Air Command, the sort of Air Defense Command, which is being envisaged. I think we have a serious problem here. We have lack of resources, and therefore, if we leave it to be fitted away in these minor pockets, we are going to land up into a situation where we will have a Kargil redo.
Thanks, Raghu.
The Kargil review talked about intelligent jointness. The Kargil review even talked about a CDS. The idea being that the reforms in higher defense management should be focused towards getting jointness in Delhi. But what has been translated down to is sort of splitting our resources into penny pockets, distributing poverty. That's the exact word I like.
Thanks. Just place this again there for the record. The Kargil committee, when it was set up, it had the late Mr. K. Subramaniam as the chairman. You will remember it had a limited mandate. Mr. Vajpayee was prime minister, and the brief was to really examine, review the Kargil war itself and whatever be the higher defense management lapses, inadequacies. And that report was again placed in the public domain, and full marks to Prime Minister Vajpayee for, in a way, giving the approval for that. But from there onwards, I think there was what the equivalent of a post-Kargil kind of, I would say, churning in the entire process. But that is just for the record. And if you remember, the Kargil committee incidentally only had one service rep, and that was from the army. There was no Air Force, no rep. So it's not meant to be a comprehensive review of India's holistic higher defense management. I'll leave it at that. That's another subject. But Admiral Lamba, if I could request you to share your thoughts on this resource crunch. What Raghu, Air Marshal Nambiar is talking about is as true for the Navy and I dare say the Army. The fact that you're unlikely to get funds for capital acquisition of a robust type that one would like to have for each service. So how do you address that in the light of the theater command reorganization? Admiral Lamba?
Thank you. See, the case is you need to have a national security strategy from which you will call out whatever the defense security strategy you want. And that will give the planning staff of the military capability required to execute that strategy. Resources are always going to be limited. Even resources are limited, has a huge budget to meet all their aspirational requirements of military capability of forces. So resource crunch is going to be there. So now with the formation of the CDS, I'm quite sure in the years to come, there is going to be joint planning or military capability required. But what military capability required at the moment is based on the operation, on the RM's operational directive. And from that, the three forces call out what is the military capability required to execute the RM's directive. You first need this document so that you can have a plan. And thereafter, the three forces can tell the government, if you want this national security strategy to be executed, this is the military capability required and this is the funding required. But taking on what Air Marshal Raghu said about the Kargil war, and the lack of the distance and the lack of planning staff, if you have theaterization, the planning staff is going to be sitting together to execute wherever the war in whichever sector is. So the distance is going to be bridged and you're going to have more effective operational planning than what is there at the moment.
That's what I just said, sir, that we had to have a single theater. We operated as a
Raghu,
single theater then, and I think that is the way it should have been fought about.
Raghu, I'll come back to you on this. I just want to actually, I hope we can have a longer chat. But General Bakshi, I'm going to actually ask you first on the same issue. Now, all three of you are from the NDA, by the way, so am I. So we have a certain bonding over there. And it's often said that there is a certain, kind of camaraderie that the NDA fosters, and you carry it forward. I mean, that was the vision of our founding fathers at that time when the NDA was set up. And I think it's a unique institution. But Praveen, I want to ask you to think about this objectively and give us your response. This lack of, I would say, harmony, the dissonance between the Army and the Air Force about use of air power. I've heard this for 40 years. When I was a young officer, this was the aftermath of the 62 war. We heard this in 65. We heard this in 71 also, that the Army was in many cases on its own. And most recently in Kargil, as Raghu Nambiar has pointed out. And I even heard this in IPKF, by the way. The fact that I'm sure all of you know about those instances tactically, where the Air Force apparently was not given whatever information it needed. If this indeed is the history, do you think that by having the theater command, and if communication was the problem, will it be resolved? Or is it something more cultural? And I mean this in terms of institutional culture.
Absolutely.
Now, inter-service rivalry is, as old as the armed forces. Every country has its experience of inter-service rivalry. We also have intra-service rivalry. I mean, you're a cavalry guy. You know what the infantry thinks of you and vice versa. And Raghu, as a fighter pilot, you know what your other peers, whether choppers or technical staff, think of fighter pilots. You guys go solo, etc. And Sunil Lamba, as the naval chief, knows the Navy's own. What does the gunnery officer think of the navigator, and what do both of them think of the technical officer? This goes on. But Praveen, if you could just address this part, is it cultural? Is it only lack of communication? Everybody has a smartphone, so now it's hunky-dory. Would that be right?
So no, I don't think that would be right in its entirety. Firstly, I would like to reiterate what Admiral Lamba said. It defies logic why this government is shying away from openly articulating, or even not openly articulating, but having a national security strategy. It is pulling us down. Resource crunches are there. Give it a thought, take a step back, and just analyze, despite our defense budget going soaring through, when we are faced with a strategic situation, our strategic choices to the government by the armed forces are getting narrower and narrower and narrower. We have really no viable choices to give to the government. Why is that so? Because of our current structures have not delivered. We are not talking of bonhomie from NDA. NDA develops bonhomie at personality level. So if Raghu and I were served in Eastern Command together, Air and Navy, Army Command, that's great. And let me tell you, I can give you n number of examples where we did things which would perhaps never have been thought of at Delhi. To the detriment of Delhi, we were going ahead and doing it. Having said that, what we lack is institutional reforms. We have shied away from taking that decision, unfortunately. And what has it resulted in? Let me give you one example. Today, the Indian Army is technically challenged as compared to the Navy and the Air Force. With theaterization, we'll bridge that gap. We will all come up to a minimum standard. There are so many other things. We all know about the turf wars of attack hepters and all. I'm not saying give it to the Army or the Air Force, but give it to somebody. You can't say, okay, you take 6 and all. That's squandering your resources. Why are we squabbling all the time? It's about time we rise above the turfs and be truly nationalistic. Now, the problem is, if you are not in with a concept, the government has taken a decision. And here I would like to underscore one important point, which I hear being repeated in articles. Government has mandated that the CDS will have no operational powers. True, but only for the tenure of the CDS. He's also been chartered to work out, flesh out the structure of a theaterization in which He may or may not decide to give operational control to the CDs. Where is the government said you will not give operational control to the future structure? But it is being touted, oh ho ho. Now that will not happen. So who do the theater commanders report to? So to my mind, sir, I think we must get the apex right. We must have a national security strategy. We must get the apex right at Delhi. We must address the question of who will the theater commanders, as in when they come up, report to. And we must talk about also perhaps the inter-services career profiles, the staff management, HR management, which should have started long back. It's not even being discussed today. IDS is the only institution we have. Tomorrow, you can't suddenly say the theaters will come about. And lastly, I would like to state, if and when the theaters do come about, I reiterate, if and when. Whilst the maritime theater, you can, establish it standalone, as Admiral LANBA has said, as the saying goes, matters at sea, people who are, the Navy knows best of what is at sea. Everyone else is literally at sea. Idea what's happening there. So the Navy is going to be there in the lead agency. The problem is really narrowing down to the air-land battle along our disputed borders. And out there, we've got to be very, very careful how are we going to address that? And that's really the crux of this theaterization. Emphatically put, sir, I'm all for theaterization, but we need to widen the ambit. And to the best of my knowledge, the services have not sat down and discussed it threadbare. We've not even discussed the character of warfare in the future.
Cheers. That's a very important point. What I will do is, in the last round, if I may, I'll request Admiral LANBA to go first, and Raghu, you can have the last word. This is a very important issue flagged by PRAVEEN, which is, do we have the resources? Earlier, Sunil, we spoke about material resources. Do we have the human resource to move into theater commands, meaning that apart from the theater commander himself, though I did see a report in the media which seemed to suggest that we will have the commands, but we will not appoint a theater commander just now, that it will be a work in progress. Do we have enough 1-star, 2-star, 3-star officers from all three services who are today in a position to assume the kind of responsibilities that will devolve on them in a theater command? So Admiral LANBA, if you would be kind enough to share your thoughts on this.
See, it's like this. See, when you say, like, if you examine the American system of theater command, which are geographical commands, in that there are separate verticals for the Army, Navy, and the Air Force. Say, like, if you take the Indo-Pacific Command, you have the Naval commander for the Pacific Fleet, and he has a structure which has naval officers and officers from the other 2-3 services in the form of Army, Marines, and the Air Force in it. But predominantly it is it is staffed by naval officers because they are aware of the maritime operations. So similarly, in our structure, when we talk of theater commanders, you will have verticals within the theater commands. It's not that some Commodore is going to sit down and decide on how the land battle is going to be fought. It's not his forte. Similarly, when you look at the Maritime Theater Command, you will have Army and Air Force representations in it, and issues which are primarily on the land or the Army or the Air Force will be decided by that vertical. That is how we are going to be, it needs to be staffed. Okay, you have a model in the ANC where you have tri-services officers from all the 3 services looking at different matters. But you will need to have verticals and you will need to have staff, and slowly over the years, you will build up a structure and an HR policy where you will need to have tri-services experience to man positions in the theater command staff. And I think that is the way ahead.
I mean, your recommendation, if I could paraphrase this, take the plunge and we will evolve as we go along. But let me turn to Air Marshal Nambiar. Raghu, I remember maybe last year, if I remember right, please correct me, when the Air Defense Command was announced, you had written about this and you have served in all these areas. So in the event this low-hanging fruit becomes a reality very soon, I presume, and I'm only presuming, that the theater commander for the AD, the Air Defense Command, would it be an Air Force officer? And if so, what are the challenges that you foresee as somebody who has addressed all these firsthand at different levels of operational and tactical responsibility? Air Marshal Nambiar?
Sir, the Air Defense Command is actually an acronym. The fact is, air defense is inherent to any air operations, whether it's air defense over the Indian landmass or air defense of our assets in a foreign airspace. It's air defense. And therefore, the fighters, the missiles, the guns, the sensors, the networking, all of them form an integral part of our air power. To now put it into an air defense command would be, I think, so totally foolish. And I would think the word of a low-hanging fruit is what has resulted in us, despite having such a huge budget, landing up into a situation where we do not have some options in a given scenario. So to my mind, the low-hanging fruit of a maritime command or a air defense command, as if you would pluck it, we would somehow get a magic wand and start making ourselves better. And in war fighting, I think it's something which is totally wrong. I'm all for theaterization as long as we consolidate our forces and put together our war fighting effort to a more sharper and more capable point.
Thank you, Air Marshal Nambiar. I think that again is a very candid and lucid kind of summary, particularly about the Air Defense Command. I want to thank you three gentlemen. I'm sorry, it's really a tyranny of time. This is a very complex subject. All of you have such rich experience. I hope we can invite all three of you again, because this is not the last word on the subject. But Admiral Lamba, with your experience as the chairman of the Chiefs of Staff Committee, apart from being the Naval Chief, General BAKSHI, Eastern Army Commander, and Air Marshal Nambiar, your very candid views about air power and what is admissible and what is not. I think this will be very useful as inputs in the public domain. But at the end of the day, I do want to remind ourselves as a nation and as those who are looking at the national security challenges, we are roughly 22 years into the economic reforms that had been launched by Prime Minister Narasimha Rao. It's more than that. It's almost 30 years. And I'm saying it in this week when we have the centenary of the late Prime Minister, Mr. Narasimha Rao. And it merits recall that when India embarked upon its economic reforms, it was preceded by very rigorous homework, which went back by many years. Different prime ministers had encouraged the professionals to work out blueprints. Where required, they got the best brains from the Indian diaspora. I do not want to mention names, but when we look at the Narasimha Rao Manmohan Singh team, it was supported, complemented by very rigorous staff work. And in this particular week, some of those who were the participants have shared their thoughts. And I've said this in the past, I'm saying it again. I think Admiral Lamba made a very important point that at some point, India has to put it down as to what is your strategy in a holistic way. And I'm using the word strategy in a classical manner, which is that strategy is the bridge between the political objectives and the military means. And I think India has been fumbling now for many decades. And this is something where I think the services also have to pool their resources and help evolve this and have that kind of a staff work. And when the government is committed to this very important policy change, policy review, I think all kinds of inputs need to be taken on, get it right, because there is no second attempt at trying to rewire the system. और यदि हम इसको संपूर्ण तरीके से देखें तो मैं बार बार कहता हूं कि राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा के इस वक्त जो समीक्षा है ये बहुत जटिल है, गंभीर है और इसके खास अर्जेंसी है, जबकि चुनौतियां इस प्रकार के हैं। और प्रधानमंत्री मोदी साहब ने जो कदम उठाया है इसका स्वागत करना चाहिए। हमारे जो कैबिनेट कमेटी ऑन सिक्योरिटी है वो सब बहुत ही एक्सपीरियंस्ड हैं और आशा हम यही कर सकते हैं कि इस मुद्दे सीएस पे दोबारा इसका एक संपूर्ण तरीके से समीक्षा करेंगे। और खास मैं कहूँगा कि हमारे जो रक्षा मंत्री महोदय हैं राजनाथ सिंह जी, वो बहुत अनुभवी हैं और जिस प्रकार से हमारे देश ने इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म्स किया था नरसिम्हा राव साहब और मनमोहन सिंह साहब के नेतृत्व में, हम आशा यही कर सकते हैं कि मोदी साहब और राजनाथ सिंह का जो जुगलबंदी होगा कि उससे ये जो लॉन्ग पेंडिंग हायर डिफेंस मैनेजमेंट रिफॉर्म्स would be carried out by this team with the support of the professionals in as successful a manner as India managed to do the economic reforms. On that note, let me thank my guests once again, and thank you for watching Security Analysis. We will be back very soon with another subject. Thank you and Jai Hind.